In politics, we would call this a BFD. Okay, this is the first time that, first of all, let me give you two benchmarks here. This is the first time that Putin has met with the United States president since 2021, before he invaded Ukraine. Number one. This is the second time he's been to the United States since 2007 that wasn't for United Nations General Assembly. So this is really a big deal. And they met in Alaska, of all places, which, guess what? Used to be a Russian colony. Did you know that? We got the best real estate deal in the world. It was something called...
Oh, yeah, we bought it for like nothing. I actually remember this.
It's called... Remember William Seward? William Seward was Abraham Lincoln's Secretary of State. And he had this crazy idea. He's like, Russia wants to unload this frozen tundra that they can't handle anymore. It's very expensive. And at that time, they were fighting in the Crimea, of course. They're always fighting the Crimea. And like, we can no longer afford to maintain this land. And there's nothing there, of course. There's no oil. Oil doesn't mean anything. And they offloaded it to us. And then William Seward caught so much flack because Americans are like, why do we need this frozen piece of land? Which turned out to be massively rich of natural resources, and I mean, totally kick-ass real estate deal. Good for him. Like rivaling the Louisiana Purchase.
Something so cheap. I can't remember the number.
Was that like 18 million?
Yes,
exactly.
I know it was like 18.
Phenomenal. Yeah. Just phenomenal. Which is why, actually, this is a little bit of a sidebar, but some Russians are saying today that that deal, no way is that legitimate, because obviously it was too sweet of a deal. And so some people are asking Putin to reclaim it, but that's a sidebar. But anyway, this is really, really important. Trump is actually, in the last couple of hours, he's trying to downplay it by saying it's just a, you know, we're just touching base to see what sort of deal we can negotiate, but he's trying to manage expectations. Something that he says over and over again is, whenever I have a good conversation with Putin, I think things are going to go well. But then I go back to the residence and I ask the First Lady, I was like, honey, I just had a great conversation with Vladimir today. And she's like, oh, really? Because Ukraine was just bombed.
Yeah, I mean, look, Russia's winning this war. That's just the fact of the matter. In 2022, there was an opportunity to engage Russia for peace negotiations. Zelensky was told by Boris Johnson at the time, he was the Prime Minister of the UK at the time, to basically avoid that. They were discouraged. And part of the reason why is because the West wanted the war to go on in order for Russia to weaken its military capability. And by the way, that allowed for the regime change in Syria because Russia was preoccupied with Ukraine, couldn't come in and protect their ally Syria or Bashar al-Assad in Syria. And after Bashar al-Assad fell, now you have the former head of al-Qaeda essentially as the new leader of Syria, which is kind of disastrous. But anyway, putting that aside, now Russia's winning the war, and they keep taking more and more territory in Ukraine.
20%.
Now, yes,
terrifying.
Exactly. And Lindy, like, this is so terrible because Trump does want peace. He wants the war to end. It was one of his promises when he ran, but it's a lot more difficult to bring Russia to the table and for Putin to really engage sincerely when he's winning. You know what I'm saying? And he wants to, you know, solidify his influence in that region of the world. And I don't know if Trump's going to be able to get Putin to engage for peace deals, especially because now Zelensky is like, I don't want to give up any territory. You know, Trump says, maybe we're going to do a territory swap. And Zelensky's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not in favor of that. So already there's like a red line that's been crossed by what Trump is proposing as part of a potential peace deal. I don't know what's going to come out of this meeting with Putin. I wish there would be peace in the follow-up to it. But I'm pretty black-pilled on this issue.
There are two things that I want to bring up. Did you guys see the Hillary Clinton thing? I think it was just this morning where she's like, I would give Trump the Peace Prize if he was able to resolve this, and there was no land given up. That's an impossibility.
It is impossible.
We already know that's an impossibility because now Putin is in this position of power. So there's also talk that he will go back, though, and we've discussed this, that he's going to sell weapons through NATO and give them to Ukraine, with the key difference here is that we're not going to be paying for these weapons. NATO is going to be buying them from us. And he's going to do hardcore sanctions again.
They don't work.
They haven't.
They don't
secondary
work.
Sanctions don't seem to work. So
this war has actually, it's kind of exposed our asses. And I'm worried about that.
Yeah.
Because it shows the influence that the United States no longer has. The sanctions have not harmed Russia. In fact, as we've talked about on this show before, the various countries, the BRICS countries specifically, of which Russia is part of, have found a workaround to the SWIFT international banking system. And so there's that. Obviously, we haven't been able to help Ukraine win this war against Russia. It shows American weakness.
Yes, and you know what it shows? Yeah. It shows China that they can invade Taiwan with no repercussions. And this is what it is. This is actually, it reminds me, this is actually the resurgence of something that came out of the Peloponnesian Wars thousands of years ago. Thucydides, the historian, said, might makes right. And what I mean by that is if you have the resources and the strength to invade a country and you win, then you're right, and you get to rewrite history. And that's what Russia is doing, because they are winning. And, I mean, Anna's totally right. That's what's happening on the ground. And Amy, I want to address something that you said, or I think it was Jillian. It's not just the fact that we wanted to give Ukraine time to win the war. It's also because we are held hostage by the military-industrial complex. In this country, the defense contractors who basically own our politicians, they wanted to prolong this conflict because they are slurping at the trough of the profits right now. Okay, that is why this has been going on for 3 years.
Yeah, I really think Trump should have never started this thing by saying the day he gets in, he's going to end it. It set up so many expectations to fail, and
Kaizen.
Yeah. The Ukraine-Russia thing is
Big sigh.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because it's, I think Lindy pointed out, there's two competing worldviews. And one worldview is, hey, there's a rule-based international order.
Bretton Woods,
where,
you know.
And it's like, hey, if someone breaks the rules, then people who are participating in the rules are required to step in. And I think a lot of Americans have lost the appetite for enforcing a rules-based international order.
Those norms have been thrown out the window.
Yeah,
I think this international law, it's a fallacy.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening. And now,
that's scary, by the way.
And here's the thing, it's like, it's easy to say we need to defend Ukraine, but if you're willing to defend Ukraine, you need to be willing to go all the way. We actually need to be willing to put American boots on the ground. And I don't think people want that.
No, we don't.
So it's like, we can do some things with sanctions on the margins, but evidently they're not working. So the solution might just be, hey, we're here to mediate, but ultimately, you guys are on your own. It's not our fight. That's not our borders.
That's totally right. You are like my spirit animal. Why haven't we done that before? I want to explain why sanctions are not working. It's because we need secondary sanctions on those BRICS nations, Anna, that you were talking about.
Right, but
it's India in particular that is the problem. Because India and China, they're gobbling up Russian oil, so they're less dependent on Western nations. They are thriving.
But you want to know why? Because if you basically take Russia out of the equation, that lowers the supply of oil in the international market. And our oil prices are going to go up.
That's exactly why Trump is right now still in the rhetoric stage, not really implementing, because he understands that we are also going to be negatively impacted if India and China face the real consequences. But this is just really, and it shows how interdependent this world is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Thank you so much for watching Her Take. If you like the show, can you help us out by subscribing to the channel, clicking the notification button, sharing, commenting, joining the conversation? It helps us out a ton with the algorithm. We appreciate you.